And indeed, the man who is now at the center of Kenya and perhaps the region's war against terror joins me, Ambassador Martin Kimani, who's a special envoy on countering violent extremism in the country. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
20 years ago, I mean, we're asking people where they were. Where were you and how did you receive the news of this attack?
20 years ago, I was actually not in the country. I was living in New York City, which, you know, on that day, of course, the greatest concern was, is my family okay?
Yeah.
Were they anywhere close to the building? And then, you know, tragically, almost the same events happened in the city I lived in now in New York.
Yes.
on 9/11.
Right, yeah.
Done by the same person.
Yes.
And by the same group.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the whole world changed then. And then the story was the world changed after 9/11. But I actually think it started to change after 1998.
How so?
Well, first, Al-Qaeda showed its face to the world.
Yeah. This was their big announcement.
Yeah. Before then, security officials knew about them. But
Okay.
I think after that, they came into the public consciousness. And I think they confirmed that their ambition for spectacular attacks could succeed. So you had simultaneous attacks on Nairobi and Dar es Salaam.
Yeah.
Then in 2000, there was an attack on an American naval ship. And then prominently, 9/11, they had simultaneous attacks in Washington and New York. So the same pattern. And they started their planning for the 9/11 attack 6 months after they did Nairobi.
Really?
And Nairobi was very much a sort of driver of their confidence.
But then, so how, that was, of course, our introduction to terror. I mean, I think for most of us, we only heard about this in Israel and Palestine, you know, the sort of attacks that were happening there. So how has our war against terror then evolved 20 years later, following our very horrific introduction to that, you know, on August 7th?
Well, first of all, the term of a war on terror, I think, is one of those unfortunate terms that many people wish we could take back.
How would you put it?
Kenya is not in a war against terror. We're in a war against terrorists and specific groups and specific people who want to harm our country. We're not fighting an abstract tactic or a sort of abstract theoretical enemy. We're fighting very specific enemies. And so our particular struggle is part of a global engagement,
Right.
but it's really to protect Kenyan lives, to protect our country, not just against attacks, but the intention of those attacks, because terrorism utilizes violence to attain other political goals. And so I think our struggle is twofold. But first, it's a security struggle. Then it's a social, cultural, and political struggle.
Absolutely. But then so much has happened in the 20 years since that attack. Osama bin Laden is now dead. What's the state, in your view, of Al-Qaeda now, of the terrorists? What's the new threat, and how is Kenya dealing with it?
Well, over the last 20 years, a lot has changed. Number one is that Al-Qaeda, the core Al-Qaeda that attacked our city in 1998, has been greatly reduced in military terms. So they've been on the run literally since September 12th. And President Obama, to his great credit, relentlessly hunted for Osama bin Laden and managed to actually neutralize him. So in this time, the changes that have come to Kenya are visible to all of us. Today, Kenyans are much more conscious of terrorist threats. Kenyans are much more conscious of the pain of terrorism. And it has come to us that we are on the front line. We've been taught very painful
And
lessons.
it's changed, hasn't it? I mean, it's more, you know, local. Because before, this was an external aggressor. But now there's all, you know, the talk of local radicalization. Is that a new front? You know?
It's not a new front, because the evil genius of Al-Qaeda and groups like them is that they have a sort of globalized ideology, but that basically is seeking any pockets of local opportunity that they can get. So they may speak the global campaign, but ultimately they're trying to find ways to graft themselves onto perceived or real grievances.
Yeah. And what would you say in your closing comments? 20 years on, they probably have a global campaign using a local language. Where are we now? What's the future?
20 years on, Kenya has been hurt, but Kenya is unbowed. 20 years on, Kenya is a freer democracy. Kenya has religions that are coexisting harmoniously. Kenyan people as a whole are decided and determined to resist terrorism, not only by the resources they provide the counterterrorism agencies, but by refusing to be divided along ethnic and religious lines. 20 years on, we're one of the few countries on that front line that have reduced the ability of groups like that to tear apart the fabric of our society. So the risk remains there, and it's something we need to be very vigilant about, and Kenyans need to be very aware about. But as a country, we have done a commendable job.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Kimani, who's Kenya's Special Envoy on countering violent extremism. We thank you for being with us today. It's been an emotional day for a lot, you know, that were there and were directly involved, and I think for Kenyans as a whole. Thanks very much for your time and looking to the future.
Thank you.